What's up, you guys? New location. This time we're going to be answering some questions from the comments section of videos that I've done in the past. I picked up a few comments that were so good, I wanted to expand on them here and share my opinions with you guys, and we can continue the conversation. So it's going to be a mismatch of a few different things, but it's going to be really, really interesting. By the way, as you can see, I have a new audio situation that I'm working on. I'm trying to upgrade my stuff, so just bear with me. Hopefully everything works out smoothly. I'm going to be upgrading more and more and more as we go along. If the audio is not the best, sorry about that. If it's better than it was before, awesome, but we're working it out. So no background information really needed for this one. Like I said, we're just going to look at a series of comments and I'm going to give my feedback on them. So let's get into it. So first, we're going to talk about Gaijin hunters. And I got a great comment from Multi Dryer, and he asked, on the note of Gaijin hunters, what are the best places to find them and how to find them? And that way I know for my next time in Japan, where he's planning in about 6 months from now. For me, the best advice is you don't really find Gaijin hunters, they find you. In the video I did with, I think, Smiley and her friends, looking for guys or whatever. I mean, her friends were looking for guys, but they went to the hub. I'd say the easy way, if you drink, basically any bar that you find on an English speaking website in a major area of Tokyo, like Shinjuku, like Shibuya, um, maybe even Roppongi, will probably have them. Don't advise you go looking for them again, but if you're coming for a short time and you're young, you just want to have fun, that is an option. But probably anywhere that has like a really, English foreign catered website will probably be a place where they'll go sniffing around, but more than likely, like they'll find you wherever you are if you are their type. Again, I talk a lot about types, on this content, and that's going to be the case. So you don't really have to sniff them out so much. I'd say just go somewhere where you want to have fun, where you're comfortable at. That's your vibe, your thing, and if they're there, they'll find you, they'll lock in, and they'll torpedo you basically. All right, next up, we have one from Muajin. And he says, well, he's been seeing plenty of interviews where Japanese girls don't consider paying for as cheating, as there's no emotional attachment for, and if the guy's dating another girl and so on and so on. However, there are many girls who prefer friends. I'm trying to censor it for YouTube, and sometimes several at the same. Sefle. Okay, yeah, I see what he's doing. He's talking about friends that you get down with without any serious commitment. So, however, many women have yeah, that sometimes several at the same time, and they say in Japan is a nation. Definitely not true. During holidays and weekends, love hotels or books. Yes. Again, I'd say Japan is more of a compartmentalized nation. So I think there are two parts of it. So first, paying for the good stuff, the goody good stuff, is I think like it's not paying for it is not seen as a big deal as long as it's not known, right? It's a big difference. Let's say you have, I talked about in another video, you have a business bachelor husband who lives in another city, another town, and on the weekends he blows off steam by going to pay for some whoop de whoop, you know. As long as he's paying the bills, taking care of all the responsibilities that need to be taken care of, and the wife doesn't know, she's not asking no questions. It's kind of like out of sight, out of mind kind of thing, right? But if she ever finds some evidence or if it comes up, then she'll never forgive him. She's not going to be like, oh, okay, well, hey, it happened, whatever, it's all good. No, because I also see several TV shows and anecdotes about Japanese women who they do find their spouse that did cheat or do some type of services or stuff like that, and they bring it up to them constantly and whatever chance that they get, or they whenever there's an opportunity where they can bring it up and kind of dig the knife a little bit deeper, they do it. So I'd say it's more like out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. and in a serious relationship, and they can kind of assume, especially if they are not being intimate together, they can assume that the husband's kind of getting their rocks off somewhere else. But as long as they don't know about it, and it's not bringing any like meiwaku or any like trouble onto the family situation, they don't really care about it. They're like, okay, great, he's releasing his tension somewhere, I don't have to worry about it, and I don't have to think about anything else. So I think that's more of the case. But I do think that's the case for older generations. I think younger women, younger, I'd say under 40, are not probably as willing to deal with that, even though they might say it. You see it in street interviews and stuff like that. But if they have a boyfriend, someone that they really care about, and they find out, they're generally speaking not going to be like, whatever. No, they're going to be pretty, tore up about it or distraught about it. It's more that he was not as careful enough to avoid getting caught, or she was able to find out. So I think that's more of a thing. Um, as far as having those type of friends, um, Japan is kind of this nation because I think it's compartmentalized. There's a lot of those type of relationships that where that passion or that stuff dries out, or has never really existed. Like, I am in the camp, right or wrong, it's kind of my belief that I'm not saying all Japanese guys, but I do think there are more than in the West, Japanese guys that don't really care so much about satisfying their partner, or they do in a way. Like, I've heard that the the foreplay, for example, is much more accentuated here among Japanese guys versus the main event. So I think they try to overcompensate in that way. But I've met some Japanese guys who was like, I don't care, I'm just trying to get my thing off and whatever. So I've heard many Japanese women online, offline, express that they don't really enjoy, the love making basically, and they never really have. So they probably maybe never had a partner that really, put the focus on them to a certain degree. Again, this is just pure speculation on my part, just from what I've seen and what I've heard in media, online and offline. But that's kind of what I think as far as that goes. And then you add that where, like, I never really enjoyed it anyway. I never really had a great experience, and then you go into marriage, and then it's like, okay, well, just go make the money and leave me alone, because I'm having to provide this service for you, and I'm not really getting much in return. I think that's kind of more what it comes down to. But again, I'm not 100% sure. The other part of it, as far as like love hotels and stuff like that, yeah, there's a lot that goes on under the surface, a lot that I don't know. That's one thing about living in Japan. Like, you have to really understand that the longer you live here, the less you really understand about the country. So I don't really know what goes on, and during holidays and weekends, of course. Sorry, I'm glancing back at the comment. During holidays and weekends, of course, because you have to think about young couples or people who live with their parents or things like that. They don't really have the chance to be really alone or intimate or free like they would. So that place is, I think, a really, really useful place, especially in and around major cities. If we're talking about the Tokyo area, like, you're gonna, you can't be loud in your house here. Like, I mean, you can be, but you're going to disturb your neighbors. And most Japanese people, Japanese women especially, don't really want to do that. If they live with their parents, they can't invite a person over, especially for special holidays and stuff like that. So the only option is to go there to get some intimacy, get some privacy, be free, and loosen up, if you will. So I think that's kind of what it is. And I mean, young people, yeah, friends with benefits is what it is. I mean, having one or several or things like that, I don't think that's the norm of everyone. I wouldn't say that's the standard. I'd say it happens, but I wouldn't say that's the standard of like all the Japanese people, all the Japanese women, and in the Tokyo area at least. But I would say it happens. But I would say it chalk it up to a certain type of girl, versus like all Japanese girls, if that makes sense. All right, next up, we have one more comment from Maojin. But he asks, the whole SM interest in Japan is huge. I've heard elementary school and junior high school girls talking about them being S or being M or doing things like that, and it's ingrained in society. Yeah, I wanted to really talk about it because this is a cultural thing. You hear that word and you automatically like, whoa. But S&M in Japan is not as impactful as we think it is in the West. Like it's more about your general state of mind, not as far as like in bedroom type situations. Like, you know, not being sadistic meaning more domineering personality, and masochistic meaning more being more passive type of personality. It's more of like a personality test, you know. So of course it can go in that direction, but I think when you're hearing younger people talk, they're talking about it is their general personality, not like bedroom activities and stuff like that. Because generally speaking, like elementary, junior high school, again, my 5 to 7 year rule is really much in effect. They don't really know what they're talking about in that sense. They're just talking about, like, you know, more being bossy, domineering kind of person, or just being more passive and kind of going with the flow type people. Like I describe myself as well. I'm in both ways, you know, in and out of those type of situations. I am that type of person, but it just gives a general view of the person's overall personality, not necessarily how we would say it in English, because we don't really introduce ourselves that way in English, but it's a little bit different. All right, next up, we've got one from the Mysterio TV 89. Great name, tagline, username. I don't even know what to call it, but great name. I'm gonna just call it name. And they say, watch out for gaijin hunters and don't date them. And so he's basically a single guy, first timer in Japan who doesn't speaks little or no Japanese, and he's wondering, you know, if he can do it. Do it. Gaijin hunters, you know, dating Gaijin hunters once or twice just to test the water. I would say that's probably going to happen regardless. Like you're probably going to end up in some capacity getting mixed up with a Gaijin hunter at some point. If you speak little or no Japanese, you're in and about the, you know, out and about the town. And yeah, it's not something like you can just like openly recognize them, but there'll just be certain traits and you're just like, oh, okay. You know, in hindsight, like if you date one or two Gaijin hunters, then you actually meet like a normal standard Japanese girl, you'll kind of start to see some of the differences and it'll register to you. But, you know, don't be like, oh my gosh, where are they? Where are they? I got to avoid them. No, it's just part of what comes with like living in Japan or moving or being in Japan for a certain amount of time or being in the dating market here. Don't really worry about it. I just say just go for it wherever you are. If you like someone, you like someone, but don't think, oh, just because they're a gaijin hunter, you know, they're gonna like poison you or and throw you in the trunk or something like that. You know, just if you hear most people talk negatively about them, it's because, you know, we've maybe had early experiences with them and then later kind of met normal girls, and then we can kind of compare, but you're not really able to do that off the break. That's all. So before we continue, I got a really important announcement for you guys. You probably noticed that I have my merch finally set up on my YouTube. It's below. Please check it out. It's not your average, just, you know, Japan according to Akil, cheesy stuff like that. It's actually stuff that I've designed myself, composite images I put together using AI and other programs and stuff like that. Some of them is really complicated, took me a while. But it's all kind of images and visions that I've had that I wanted to kind of make because for this channel, you know, I don't want to do a Patreon. You know, my goal is to make this whole channel, all my content, Patreon free for the long term, and basically give you guys as much value as you guys can for two reasons. The first reason is I don't want another job, okay? Like, I feel like Patreon is a job. Now, so it works for some people, it's totally fine, but, you know, I did this to get away from a 9 to 5, and I think if I did do a Patreon, it would just put me back in that space. And the second one, I want to be able to give you guys as much value as possible. And I believe that it will be much more profitable for me to give you guys as much value as possible, and I'll be able to, it'll turn into money in other ways. I'm 100% certain on that. So, I got a lot of stuff in the pipeline. This is just one of the things that I have for 2024, 2025. Again, if you want to support the channel, just scroll down, peruse, see if there's stuff that you like. If you want to rock it, I really design stuff that I would want to wear. If you like it, go ahead, support the channel that way. But, don't feel like, you got to do this or got a paywall and all that stuff. That's not my style. And that's not what the direction we're going to go with this. We're going to try and do something really different for YouTube, and try and put my best foot forward in content, in merch, in information. As you can see, is what I'm trying to do, and grow a community that way. And I think if we do it that way, we can do something special, and we can all have fun, and we can all ball out and enjoy stuff. So for 2024, 2025, I got a lot of good stuff coming. Please check it out, and thanks. So next up, we've got one by Bluefish H6Q. And he asks, is this part of the reason Japanese men and women don't get married anymore? This was in response to a video I did about cheating in Japan. So he was asking, like, is cheating in Japan the reason why Japanese men and women are getting married less and less? Now, for me, this is a really complicated answer, and it's different than what you might think on the surface. Like, I am a firm believer that the reason why the fertility rate and why the marriage rate in Japan is going down is because of the instability in the Japanese economy. Generally speaking, that, after the bubble economy burst, Japan went through basically almost 2 decades long stagnation. And during that time, job opportunities and things like that were really at a minimum. So the motivation for people to really be ambitious and rise up in a company really went down for a generation of men. And also the opportunities, wages, everything were low, but Japan was in a deflationary type situation. So basically there was a floor of life, for a lot of people. If you could get your little cog into the machine, you were kind of there and you could eke out an existence that would mean not like a great life, but you could have something, right? Now, fast forward to about 2010, I believe, when inflation was really like, let's inflate the economy and get out of deflation was a thing. I believe that dropped that floor, the trap door went boop, and then that base level of society went down. And then, of course, with the pandemic and the amount of inflation that was unleashed on the world as a result of that, just was even more of a thing. So now you have a whole younger generation who don't really believe that their parents, didn't really instill the motivation to try hard in their companies and in life, really. Their parents were like, hey, we did it, like the boomer generations of the West. So like, hey, we did it. It's easy. Just work hard, go to school, and you'll be fine. And they're like, no, it doesn't really work like that nowadays for a large amount of young people. And they see like marriage and kids not as something that they strive for as a luxury. I've heard several people in the past few months tell me like having kids and getting married is a luxury for them. It's not really a necessity. And, they have enough to satisfy their needs with technology, with their phones, with the internet and stuff like that. And they don't really, they're not really incentivized to risk it all, go for it. And, go gung ho, because they don't really see a path to kind of excellence here for them. And because of that, I think that's what makes it much harder on the men's side to really strive to basically kill themselves almost to provide a stable situation where they can get married and have kids. On the female side, though, I think that expectations haven't really adjusted yet, and so there is still a large amount of young Japanese women who still feeding into the traditional thing of, we need a house, we need this, we need that, we need these to check these boxes to validate ourselves in our lives. I still go through these things in my marriage as well, in my life as well, trying to balance those two things and prepare for the future in other alternative ways. But I completely understand my partner's expectations and societal expectations and things like that. And it's a constant kind of struggle, but I don't think that the average Japanese woman has become aware enough to really think that those expectations need to be adjusted. And the past that she's grown up with and the environment she might have grown up in might not be what exists today, generally speaking. And so, you do have some people who are, doing those things, and of course, getting married and stuff like that. But um, I think for a large amount of mainly young Japanese men aren't really incentivized as much to strive to provide that type of place. I do believe, like, if the Japanese economy was strong enough, if Japanese companies were strong and viable enough, and if the currency was stable enough here for to support, single income families, that there was marriage and kids would not be a problem. And I'm pretty sure, like most of you guys are from the United States, I'm pretty sure you could agree that's the truth in the US as well. So I think it's more of an economic factor at its base, and everything else is kind of built up on top of that. And the seeds of that were sown, after the bursting of the bubble economy, and maybe even again, I don't want to get too deep in economic land, but maybe even way before that, going off the dollar standard and a whole bunch of other stuff like that. But especially now we're in that post-pandemic inflationary environment. The wheels are kind of coming off in a lot of ways, and less young, I believe less and less younger people are seeing that as a viable path or a viable option for them. And they're looking for kind of substitutes to find fulfillment in their lives: online, internet, gaming, stuff like that, other night services that might scratch the itches that they have. I don't know. Again, I don't get too deep into that. That's just all my just speculation, just looking from the outside. I'm not looking down on them. I'm not judging them. I do wish the economy was a lot more stable here. The currency was a lot more stable. But again, it's the cards we're dealt all over the world, and Japan's not the only place in the world dealing with these things. And I think younger generations in probably most of the developed countries in the world are dealing with that. So, and they have the older generation looking down on them and saying, like, what are you doing? All you got to do is XYZ. But I believe the rules of the game have changed, but society hasn't really caught up with it. So please be sure to leave a like, a comment, this video, any video. I'm scrolling through the comments, picking out good stuff. I'm going to do many more of these in the future. I'm having fun. I hope you're having fun. Check out another video, and I will holler at you next time. Peace.